Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer hearing for September 11th, 2019. My name is Roger Kiesel, and I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. We have one case today, and relevant exhibits are posted on the panel located directly behind me. That one case this morning is a conditional use permit case. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.42 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a conditional use permit shall be granted if four required findings are present. They are, the first finding, that the proposed use will be consistent with the elements and objectives of the general plan. The second finding, that the use and its associated structures and facilities will not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or the environment. The third finding, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. And the final finding, that adequate public and private facilities, including utilities, landscaping, parking spaces, and traffic circulation measures are or will be provided for the proposed use. Findings. If the evidence presented in the application and at the hearing meets the criteria just described, then the planning officer can either approve or approve with conditions the case in question. If the findings of fact cannot or are not evident, then the request will be denied. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices which were mailed to property owners located within property owners and occupants within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question and placed in the local newspaper. And we also post this on the city's website. The hearing will proceed as follows. I'll read a brief description of the application or the request. I'll read the reports received from other city departments and other letters or communications from interested parties. Then the case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating their name, and will be asked to present the case within 15 minutes. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again clearly stating their name, and they have a 3-minute time period. Finally, the applicant will be given an opportunity to make closing statements if desired in response to testimony given by preceding speakers with a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will then be closed and taken under submission for a decision. Decision. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all people who responded to the public notice, either by speaking at the hearing or by submitting written responses and have provided their names and mailing addresses. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. Appeals. Under the appeal provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the decision date, and the notice of the appeal shall be filed with the Building and Safety Division located in the Municipal Services Building, room 101. Speaker's card. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker's forms which have been provided by the front door, and submit it to our staff. All right. As I mentioned earlier, we have one case on the agenda. The case is conditional use permit number PCUP 1905776. It's located at 3909 San Fernando Road, number G is the address. The applicant is Janelle P. Williams, Williams Land Use Services. The name of the business is Solar Studios. And the brief project description, the project is requesting approval of a conditional use permit to allow a backlot outdoor facility production use associated with a broadcast studio and indoor support facilities located in the IMU-R Industrial Commercial Residential Mixed-Use Zone, described as a portion of lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, Block 2, WCB Richardson Track. Why don't I call on the case planner to do an overview of the case, Mr. Collin?
Thank you, Mr. Kiesel. As mentioned, this is a conditional use permit to allow the operation of a backlot and associated production studio in the IMUR, which is the Industrial Commercial Residential Mixed Use Zone. The backlot entails the use of 2 outdoor open space arcades located on the exterior of the subject tenant space that will be used for filming, photo shoots, and other communication media production type activities. All activities will take place on the private property. Currently, there's a business registration certificate for the tenant for Solar Studios as a broadcasting studio and indoor support facilities production, which is a permitted use in this zone. The building is currently under construction for a 4-story mixed-use building containing 141 residential apartments over 1 story of commercial and 2 live-work units. As mentioned, the zoning is IMUR, Industrial Commercial Residential Mixed-Use Zone. The property contains 177 parking spaces. Access to the parking for the residential units is provided via a gate or a gated driveway along the public alley. The ground level covered parking, about 43 spaces, is provided for the non-residential units as well as guest parking. Access to the non-residential parking is provided from a driveway from San Fernando Road as well as being directly accessible from the alley, which runs parallel to San Fernando Road. The proposed business would be located on the ground level of the 4-story building. It's currently under construction. The subject tenant space would be located adjacent to Central Avenue and the alley. Property is surrounded by commercial and mixed uses, residential and commercial projects. And the subject business was in operation at this location for the past 20 years prior to the demolition of the site, which was February 2016. And they're proposing to return to the new building. Staff believes that all 4 findings can be made in a positive way and recommends approval of the project subject to the attached conditions, which you have before you. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for comments.
Great, thanks.
Or questions.
I'll go, typically we have comments from other city departments. In this case, there were no concerns from other city departments, so I'll kind of skip that. So I'd like to call on the applicant, Janelle Williams. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Kiesel. Thank you very much, Brad, for the staff report and all your work on this. We appreciate it. Would you like to talk about conditions now, or do you want me to just go through the findings?
Why don't you go through the findings? I've got a couple questions for you, and then in your presentation, if you've got
Okay, that may explain
questions
some
or
things.
whatever on the conditions, proposed
Okay.
conditions. Yeah.
We are requesting approval of a conditional use permit to allow a portion of the activities of a production facility to take place outside of the building, or in this case called a back lot, taking place in 2 separate outdoor arcade areas that are connected at the rear corner, where it's a wraparound space, located within the subject property, which will not require the encroachment onto any public streets or sidewalks. The windows and walls of the back lot have been designed as location vignettes for the filming of outdoor scenes for commercials that will also connect with the activities that take place on the interior space inside of the building, again, all within the private space and a natural extension of the interior activities. The exterior arcade or backlot spaces are a part of the private outdoor space and designed for uses that would be complementary to and integrated with the interior uses, including sharing of walls and windows and doors and establishing connecting shots between the two spaces. The first finding that the proposed use will be consistent with the various elements and objectives of the general plan. Solar Studios, again, is located in the IMUR zone, which is comprised of a mix of commercial and industrial and residential uses. While the proposal requires a conditional use permit for the private specialized use of the outdoor space, the proposed use as a production studio is permitted in the zone and is consistent with the land use element of the general plan. Both San Fernando Road and Central Avenue are identified as major arterials in the circulation element where a backlot would be suitable and appropriate in this location. The noise element would be complied with at all times. The venue is not suited to action, adventure, or stunt actions such as some of the major studios' backlots would use. The backlot of our studio is more for art and advertising environment. So beyond ambient noise, there could be conversational dialogue scenes. Backlot uses would never include explosions or sound other than dialogue or something of a similar decibel level that would never violate the noise ordinance. The objective of the various elements of the general plan is to promote the best possible use of the property within the city. This use is complementary to the existing uses in the IMU zone, and historically, since 1996, Solar Studios has proven itself to be a compatible land use which has not prompted any calls for police service, generated any complaints from neighboring businesses or residents. The second finding, that the use and its associated structures and facilities would not be detrimental to the public health or safety, the general welfare, or to the environment. The facility is located at the intersection of Central and San Fernando Road. The space will be used as a production studio with typical activities of a production facility, compatible with the definitions associated with a production facility in the Glendale Municipal Code. A mixture of uses in the zone is encouraged, including entertainment and commercial production, such as the type we are proposing. The area is fully developed with mixed uses, retail, office, auto repair, body shops, and so on. Given the use of the area, no detriment is expected to occur with this proposed backlot use. Next finding, that the use and facilities will not adversely affect or conflict with adjacent uses or impede the normal development of surrounding property. The production studio facility, as Brad had mentioned, has existed on the site from 1996 until the lot was cleared in 2016. For the prior 20 years, the use did not adversely affect or conflict with any adjacent uses or normal development of any surrounding property. The use of exterior arcade space is not anticipated to cause any conflicts with surrounding development. The area is completely built out, and new development in the future would not be affected by the continuing existence of Solar Studios or its backlot uses. And the fourth finding, that adequate public and private facilities such as utilities, landscaping, and parking spaces are provided for the proposed use. Adequate public and private facilities such as utilities, landscaping, and traffic circulation measures are provided for the proposed use. The completed site will be fully developed, and associated utilities are existing. Parking is located on site and was approved by the City Council. The new building meets or exceeds all landscaping and parking requirements. All fire suppression and seismic requirements are also provided. Traffic circulation was addressed in the environmental review for the project and was adopted and approved by the City Council. Backlot use will not generate new parking demand, as it will, again, be integrated with uses on the interior of the building and be part of that interior use. Do you have any questions at this point?
Okay. I'm writing down something, so.
Okay.
First question. You know, I'm not in the film industry. Describe what this use is and how it operates, just so that I'm clear. And
The interior and exterior spaces would be integrated with one another. For the most part, the outdoor space would be used to, for example, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to backlight the windows for action that may be taking place inside of the studio.
okay, so why don't you come up here and sort of,
Oh, I'm going to send Peter.
You want me to do all that?
Yeah, I'm going to send, this is Peter Cohn.
okay. And he
He's the owner of
the
Solar
owner.
Studios.
Okay,
Owner operator.
hi. Okay, so
I'm going to point out that,
how does the use, what is the use and how does it operate?
okay, so this area here is sort of the court of the studio. This is where the main studio would take place. Over here is the support rooms, and goes out to the parking.
Okay.
Over here,
I'm sorry. Orient me where the streets are.
all right, so this is Central Avenue,
Okay,
and this is the alleyway.
okay,
The auto body shop's here, and the train station's just here.
okay,
So this is west, this is north, this
Okay.
is south, more this way.
okay.
So, for the 20 years before, when we designed this building this time around, we cut it short, you know, say around 15 feet and around 8 feet on the two sides, because in the past, we had always been in public right away. We have to get permits, have to do things. So we made our building smaller, we made this private zone, so we could light the window and shoot from the inside. We could shoot, as I say, like B-roll or pick-up scenes where there's a cafe scene or a French market or someone's discussing something in front of the door to a hotel or a lobby, then they come into the space. So they kind of work on both sides of that wall.
Okay.
And the windows in the wall, you know, many times when you're driven around, you see a film shoot going on, you see people all across the sidewalk, and there's people inside the house, and there's a Folgers commercial, and there's someone in the front yard, there's all this stuff going on. So how we've done it, we can all be on private property to do that. So this is just sort of shots that would be an establishing shot or an ending shot, or someone walks through a door, they come back in.
I can't imagine, I mean, if it's 15 feet wide, I can't imagine that, I mean,
It's minimal.
that's what I'm,
It's not going to be, like Janelle mentioned, we're not going to be having Mel Gibson there and Danny Glover blowing up a car. Like, it's not like that. It's more, it's dialogue, it's advertising, it's people having a conversation and they go inside and there's some other scene happening.
okay,
It's small type activity. It's, you know, it's 40, 50 feet long, there's some pillars out there, a lot of just photography would take place, establishing shots, kind of creating a theme of what's going to happen next. Our main business is kind of is advertising work, you know, and these things last for a day or two or three, and sometimes it's busy for a few days, sometimes it's quiet. It's just sort of, it isn't like it's where that, you know.
you do mostly commercials.
Mainly commercials, and now we have a lot of streaming services where there's smaller size, like Netflix and all these types of Hulu and different companies out there where they kind of started small and they kind of keep small, and you're watching it on laptops and small screens, and I mean, everybody does that, it seems like.
Okay, okay. Is there ever a time where one entity is using the inside of the building and a totally different thing, a totally different entity is using the
No,
outside?
because it's not enough. It has to be a cohesive use. It'd be too kind of competing. It is, I think, in rare situations, if there was no sound being done. Let's just say there's a small photo shoot on the inside, and they're working over here in this corner, and there's one guy doing something small, doing some kind of established. It could be photography because there's no sound taking place. That wouldn't be that often, but it could be two small groups of people in that scenario.
Okay.
You couldn't really tell from the outside there was anything different. It just all would look the same kind of.
Okay. But typically,
One group.
It's one group.
Yeah.
Even if I'm Group A and I just want to work on the inside, I just need the inside, and then all of a sudden Group B comes in and they just want to work on the outside, it just isn't.
We don't have that very often because there's only so much support facility. So it's usually one group or the other group, or they make a different time to come.
Okay. Okay.
Companies don't like sharing.
Okay.
Well, even with the use of the outdoor space, you still need the support facilities that are in the interior of the space, so it just wouldn't
Okay.
be
Yeah,
likely
I
or
think
possible
that's-
to do more than one.
You know, we've
entity
sort
at
of
a
set
time.
up like this area here is a photo cove, which is like kind of like a seamless white wall, or it could be green or blue for animation. And they put the subjects on here, and they would shoot. And there's like makeup rooms and support rooms in here. So a lot of times, someone's just kind of working here. So we have different elements that you could use.
Okay. All right. Some of these other questions, a couple of other questions, you kind of touched on in your presentation.
So, should I sit down?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Don't go too far.
Come back up. Ready.
Actually, real quickly, the tenant space is on the first floor, correct?
Yes.
And then above that are the residential units?
Above that are not residential units. Above that, immediately above that is the
Pool.
pool.
The pool,
Okay.
the gym.
Yeah, pool
and
and
an
gym.
open
There's,
space.
residential is another 12 feet or 14 feet above this studio ceiling.
And,
It's double
Yeah.
high.
okay, that was going to
And we
be,
have a cement podium that's like, a foot of cement. It's like,
so you, on the first floor, you have your studio. What's on the mezzanine?
so on these
Is it
mezzanines.
like a loft?
Yeah, these mezzanines are in the same, okay, like this is just gonna be kind of like a railing and kind of
Oh.
like a living room kind of bedroom, just kind of like a set, like a look, and a staircase, and underneath there could be like a kitchen or something, like a bathroom, and over here you have like production offices and bathrooms. It's all double decker.
So this is open?
Yeah, this is all
Okay.
open
Okay.
flow space here. This is only like 20 feet by 10 feet. These are relatively small. It's similar size to this back
Okay.
one almost.
But the bulk, this is a double height?
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
is 20 feet high. The bulk of the activity will take place
Okay,
mainly in the space,
okay.
for sure.
And then along Central, you'll have a corridor that you're using, and then down the alley?
And on the central side, it's not even going to get used that much. We're doing most of the things in the back of this wider, and it's bigger, and we're kind of in that alley where there's already a bunch of activity happening with trucks and a body. I mean, there's a lot of, I've been there for many years, and that alley back there is just, it's a loud place back there, so we're not going to be so much on the central side.
Okay.
It's half as wide.
What kind of noise or lighting impacts are you anticipating?
We're not anticipating any. All lighting will be directed
Shining inside the studio.
inside the studio. It will not be directed outside.
And it faces
So-
west.
It won't be directed away from the space. It'll be directed into the space.
So regardless of whether you're filming inside or outside, it
Right.
will be directed
Inside,
this way
Yes.
correct.
or this way, and
Yeah.
and you'll
Like-
just see lit windows.
In many cases, probably more cases than not, there's a Moorish arch window. That was like our branding.
Yeah.
Remember that. And then we're building along the other wall. As I mentioned this, another brick wall from the original bricks that we had that was built with in 1908. So we're going to make it a brick wall with 3 windows on this side, and that door right there is an access panel. So you're going to walk in from the alley and have a 5-foot space. We can walk behind these windows and light them into the space. So we're not going to be outside very much at all on this side, right? It's mainly on this side. So
But as far as the lighting
the lights
is
are going to
concerned,
come in.
it's going to come
be on
in.
this side, coming this, and it faces west for a reason, because that's where the light comes from. So if you're sitting in front of this thing, it's an outside shot. So you're going to have lots of daylight, and then maybe some. So let's say behind you be the west window. So if I have a light, I'm shining it at you with the light behind me to match the daylight, and the backdrop is the building. We're not going to film the guy's parking garage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then your other question had to do with noise.
yeah.
It would be conversational. That would be the loudest it
It
would
has to
get
be
out.
quiet.
It would be very
fairly
quiet.
in a way, or not a whole lot of noise, because we don't, an establishing shot, car pulls up, someone gets out, someone walks in, they talk for a minute. It could be limiting how much you could do outside because of the ambient noise. So it's more of a visual thing,
Okay.
and maybe it's quiet for 30 to 40 seconds at a time. You couldn't have a speech for half an hour out there. It's quick stuff, pickup shots they call them,
Okay.
B-roll or something like this.
What's B-roll?
B-roll is like secondary roll to A-roll. It's like
Oh. Okay.
it's just less.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. This one. Okay. Final question, I think. You operated for 20 years.
Mhm.
You can actually. Thanks. You operated for 20 years. The building was demolished in 2016.
Yes.
What happened to your operation for the intervening 3 years?
So
Did you move or?
before I had business in 2000, sorry.
Oh, you need to speak in the mic. I'm sorry.
Right. So prior to having my own location, I worked as a location sort of scout manager. So that's how I understood the likes and dislikes and the architecture and that type of thing. So I kind of went in, did that to maintain some presence, and I had maybe 5 or 10 other spaces that I would try to bring my clients to with some success, and just kind of stayed in the game. And I spent a lot of time sort of thinking about the planning of this and all that goes with it.
Okay. You were the operator for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
between
was.
1996
And in 2000,
and 2016.
right.
Okay.
I started
okay.
the whole idea. And
Okay. And then for 3 years, you really didn't have a place, but you kind of acted as an agent?
I brokered and was an agent like I started prior to having. I didn't just get my own space in '96. Never having with no clue. I had a practice
Sure.
of doing this.
Okay. But you were the owner since 96. Okay.
I've been the only person the
Okay.
whole time.
And during those 20 years, did you have any complaints from neighbors? Were you a good neighbor? Were there issues?
No, my neighbors and I got along well. We would share parking. We would rent parking. My clients would get their cars fixed over there. They come over for food sometimes. I would often rent other parking lots for larger productions. People seemed to like the atmosphere it would bring in. It took an average day and made it kind of put some life into the alley out there, and people just like not what's happening today, and they would come by and they would look and they would see different people maybe you had seen in a movie or on TV or heard on the radio, or I don't know, people just enjoyed it. And then the city, apparently when they knocked the building down and they went to entitle the process, they asked if I would return with my business, because I think that ties together the new neighborhood that's going on around there with the rail and all the, there's like what, 5 or 6 towers of residents. There's
Oh, right,
two
right,
here,
right,
and
right.
there's 2 at the, I don't know what it's called, on the corner of Cross and Vons, and you have the Griffiths. So you have, I don't know, quite a few people,
Sure.
that want to have a cool neighborhood or something. I don't know.
Okay.
Something like
But
that.
it sounds like, at least according to you, you operated as a good neighbor for 20 years.
It was harmoniously. I
Okay.
never had a project get shut down. I never got fined for anything.
Okay.
I'm very hands-on and communicate well with the people that come in, who are very used to going on location, meaning that they're a traveling circus. They go to a house or to a neighborhood or to another town, and it's motorhomes and there's trailers and there's permits, and they understand where the sidewalk and the grass is in the alley, because they can't get shut down either. So everybody understands they're on the road. Like,
Okay. All right. That was my last question. Do you have anything else you want to present, to say?
Well,
Speak on the mic.
yeah, we would like to talk about the suggested conditions,
Okay.
if this is the appropriate time for that.
This is the only time you have left.
So, looking at the
Conditions?
Yes, the suggested conditions. And there are
Looks like there are 15 of them.
15 conditions, and we think most of them are absolutely fantastic. We love condition 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But we want to clarify that there could be some latitude with condition 8 in conjunction with condition number 14, which would be an annually renewable special event permit that Alan is working on. So depending on the event, we could, on very rare occasion, necessitate the use of the arcade space beyond 10 p.m.
Okay, so,
The noise and the lighting and the fresh air and all those other ordinances would be always complied with. So the intent of the condition would be preserved.
okay, so let's stop there if
Okay.
you have any other. So condition 8 states that the backlot use, and in parentheses, the use of the exterior arcade, hours of operation shall be 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through
Yes.
Sunday. Meaning you cannot use the arcade before 7 a.m. or after 10, ever. So that's what that means. And
So-
then what you'd like to achieve is that if there is a special event, meaning not a normal scene or normal commercial or normal filming, there's something
That may
Not one of
necessitate
those.
the use beyond 10.
10 a.m.
Yeah,
and
Probably not.
before 7,
probably not.
that
But still
you want to see
keeping-
how that,
But still keeping the noise down and the lighting and all of that to
Okay.
preserve the
so
quiet
what,
enjoyment of properties around there.
right, so what special events are you just,
I can't even anticipate one, but I just want the latitude to be able to not be hamstrung.
it's rare.
And it would be.
so
so we
it
just
could be a
ask that-
commercial or regular filming,
be.
or if this is, like a party.
Let's say Okay, it's not,
You need to speak
Okay.
into the mic.
so, no, it's not really like a party, but let's just say for a particular treatment or a particular shoot, or because how the sun is that day, or the time of year where there's less sun or there's more sun, where somebody needs to prep the outside area before a certain time, or maybe
Okay.
or maybe something went on that took more time to finish, you know. But again, these things are once, you know, are blue moony kind of things, but or sometimes with technology or how things are constantly changing or the way people view and do things, you never know what treatment or what might happen. Like in things happen quick, you know, and but again, the quiet enjoyment, the noise, all those kind of things are not. There's no exception on that. It's just being able to use the space in those certain circumstances that may occur, but not necessarily.
So, for instance, as an example, you're filming in the summer and it's a night scene. It doesn't get dark until
Right,
9
9
o'clock.
o'clock all of a sudden. So now in the wintertime, right.
And the scene
Could
takes
have been
3
done at
hours to shoot or
7:30,
whatever.
now it needs to be done at 11:30.
Okay, so that's the sort of issue
That's a
you're
good
talking
example.
about. Okay,
It's 106 degrees outside at 7, but it's cooler at
right.
The heat thing, it could be,
Okay,
or we're dealing with some celebrity or some person and they're late. Or something something went on where, oh, we got to start a couple hours later because this happened.
and how often do you anticipate this
Not that
occurring?
often, rare.
But you don't have a
It's like the
10 times a year.
Yeah, 10
Let's
times
say
a
that.
year. 10 times a year.
Okay, all right. Actually, I've got another question for you. Is this, or will this be in use every day?
Probably not.
Was your, in your 20-year span, was it?
Look, it seemed like on average, I was busy 10, 20 days a month.
Okay. So between a third and 2/3 of the time.
Yeah,
It
there,
would be-
there are certain times of the year where the industry is kind of dormant, and then there's always these new types of mediums and entertainments where we'll take this particular season on Netflix because the ABC and everyone else, like when you watch talk shows and things, certain times of the year, it's a rerun for like, oh my God, I've seen this show, and every night you've seen this show, and all of a sudden the fall series comes around, right? And that's how traditional media has always worked. And then you have like, again, I just use streaming services, Hulu and so forth. They find ways you can watch things on demand, and they can market and find smaller markets where they can easily pull out of situations because they aren't so invested. They're not in the large screen business, and that's how they made their niche.
Okay, all right. So that's those are conditions 8 and 14. Anything else?
8 and 14. Yes, condition number 9
Okay,
would be unduly restricted. We spoke yesterday with Celine Manukian over at the city management office.
Yeah.
She's the city's film liaison. She requires 2 to 3 days to process a filming permit, not a week. And sometimes we don't have a week's notice. We need it in, 2 or 3 days. We need to film within 2 or 3 days. So
okay.
sometimes there is only a 2 to 3 day lead time. So
we
we would lose business if a week's notice was imposed on us.
Okay,
So we would just ask that that condition be removed and that we just defer to the filming liaison for the rules that exist for filming.
all right. So you need a filming permit to film in the public right-of-way,
Yes.
correct? And the woman who's in charge of that in the management services says it usually takes her 2 to 3 days.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that's where the
It was
discrepancy
always
is.
that way,
Yeah.
by the way, sorry. So it was always 2 or 3 days for the last 20 years.
Okay.
And when I read that, I thought, well, I haven't been working in a year or two, maybe that's something that's new. But then yesterday, we called her, and it's still the same. So again, we're not
Okay.
going to be pulling very many permits because we're already permitted. But in the event there are things outside of these conditions and a company needs to come in, they never know a week or two in advance what they're doing. These things are pulled right, just before.
Okay. So it's not that you want to not comply with a city regulation.
Correct.
It's
Just the
the
time
timing.
restriction, yeah.
Okay.
We don't
Okay.
want to lose business
We don't want to
because,
be over-regulated on that one because you don't have, it's only 2 or 3 days, I said,
Okay.
for everybody.
All right. Anything
yeah,
else?
yes. So going to condition number 10,
Yeah.
so unless, we would say that unless the same condition is imposed on other Glendale studios,
So let me just read that condition.
Yeah.
So everybody has a reference. So condition 10 states that that all neighbors of the subject building, both residential and commercial, and all neighbors within 300 feet of the property shall be notified at least 3 days prior to any event occurring outside and or within the public rights of way.
so we would like to change that to include just the public rights of way. And we talked about location shooting, where film companies will come to a location and do filming, even if it's inside the house. Yes, they do have to go around and get notified all of the neighbors and so forth. But that is location shooting. That's not within their own private property and their own private backlot. And that condition is not imposed on any other Glendale studio that I'm aware of, and there are many of them. And again, we would like to be able to compete fairly and not be unduly restricted on that. So we agree to that requirement in the public right-of-way,
Okay.
not
So
within our own private space.
all right. So how you're proposing to amend the condition is notify all these people if work should occur in the public right of way.
Outside.
So if it's simply outside.
I would just remove and or. Just take out and or, and it would be, shall be notified at least 3 days prior to any event occurring outside within the public rights of way.
Yeah, omitting the phrase any event occurring outside.
Not,
You can leave it outside within the public right of way.
not
I would just
private.
take off and or.
Oh, okay. Got it. Because what you're concerned about is filming on your property within the arcade.
The private outside.
Yeah, outside of the public right of way, inside of the private outdoor space.
Okay.
Back lot.
Otherwise,
Okay.
it puts us back where we
Because,
started, in a way, because
this
then all
is
of a sudden
not-
we have to talk to, like, if we're gonna be in our private space, it's the same as being inside.
Now, if
our
they're
space.
filming on location somewhere, then yes, of course, they
Yeah.
have to do that just
It's a
like
film
Disney
permit,
and
then
everybody
that's a
else
film
has to.
permit. But to be in our private arcade, if we had to talk to every person in an apartment building to do something, it's like getting a phone permit all over again. So as long as we're not in public right of way involving public permits and film permits, it should fall in that category of being.
Inside of the conditional use permit.
Okay. Anything else?
We love 11, 12, 13, and 15,
Okay.
okay?
We do.
All right, so you're most concerned about 8, 9, 10, and 14.
Most concerned about 10,
Okay,
and
But-
then yes, the other ones that we
Okay.
mentioned.
all right. Very good.
It would,
Yes.
just, whatever the other studios have to comply with, we want to comply with.
Okay. Do you have anything else?
Appreciate your time.
Okay. So I'm going to end the hearing. It is 10:25 on September 11th. So the hearing is done and this meeting is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.